So thank you for coming. Thank you all members from ICFO for coming to Madrid. And we start with this roundtable about how is monitoring around the world. We are having with us, I'll start from Javier García de Confío in México, Harmienke Kloeze from CBF in the Netherlands, Martina Ziegerer, CEO of ZEWO in Switzerland, and Burkhard Wilke, CEO of ZEWO in Germany. Javier, voy a empezar contigo, si te parece bien. Vamos a ver, acabamos de ver lo importante que es los principios que tenemos comunes entre todos nosotros. Y uno de ellos es la transparencia financiera y todo el tema de las cuentas y que todo aparezca en las web y demás. En el caso de México, la situación es un poco distinta. ¿Nos podrías contar un poco sobre este tema, que me parece interesante? Que no siempre se puede adaptar como quisiéramos, o sea, hay que adaptar los principios a las realidades de los países y eso es lo que hay que hacer, lo que hacemos cada uno de nosotros en nuestros países. Entonces, Confío se ha adaptado a la situación de México para que sean aplicables los principios.
Bueno, sí, primero, buenos días a todos. Es un gusto estar con ustedes esta mañana. Bien lo has dicho, Ana, cada miembro debe hacer una evaluación sobre qué principios son verdaderamente un principio en un país y también revisar cuáles son aquellos ámbitos donde esos principios se aceptar que puede ser que no funcionen. Para el caso de México, nosotros hace 12 años evaluamos el tema sobre cómo hacer más transparente la información de las organizaciones en el aspecto financiero también. Y en este sentido encontramos que por las circunstancias del país, en donde pues exhibir estados financieros de una manera pública, la riqueza de una organización, sus componentes, sus activos, su patrimonio, por los directivos y por los consejos directivos de estas organizaciones se veía como un riesgo en el tema de ser una cuestión de seguridad para la propia organización, para los empleados. Eso es lamentable cuando las circunstancias de un país no te permiten actuar con la mayor libertad en la información y en la transparencia, porque sientes que hay algo negativo, que puede ser real o no, pero hay un sentimiento, al final del día hay un sentimiento sobre que eso puede impactar negativamente, abrir la información financiera al público a través de una página web, a través de toda la información que se pone entonces ahí. Y bueno, lo que hemos hecho es recomendar a las organizaciones que publiquen, que están abiertas a recibir esas dudas de la sociedad, esas dudas que son genuinas para solicitar información y que abren a través entonces de sus sitios web y sus comunicados con un detalle claro sobre cómo una persona puede acceder entonces a la información financiera y establecer las rutas y los mecanismos para sí acceder a la información, pero claro, eso le permite a la organización también decidir cuál es el grado de seguridad que tiene al estar entregando la información, pero de una manera más aplicada. No todas las organizaciones, debo decirlo, no todas las organizaciones van por ese camino. Muchas de ellas también dicen, aquí está la información, yo lo abro, siento que no hay problema, pero vaya, sí que ha sido un reto que las organizaciones puedan tomar de esto de una manera abierta y decir, sí, nosotros ponemos la información y no hay problema. Sí tenemos una resistencia en ese tema.
Sí, pero la importancia del evaluador de adaptarse a la situación del país y a la realidad del país, que es lo que toca y poco a poco ir avanzando, ¿no?
Correcto.
Con ello. Burkhard, You've been, this ZEWO, you haven't been 130 years, but this ZEWO was founded 130 years ago. That's a long time. What's the keys of this the success for monitoring organization to continue and to the evolution and to continue with this work? And also, I know you are changing a few things on how you see the fundraising. Could you tell us about that, please?
Well, Anna, I think well, I can only witness 30 years of this 130 years, but our predecessors documented their work, and I think one of the lessons learned we can draw from the past is that the diverse structure of our governance of our institute has provided stability. So the board of DZI, which is steering our work, consists of 5 representatives of 5 institutions. It's the German Federal Ministry of Family Affairs, which is also responsible for civil engagement. It is the city government of the city of Berlin and the German Association of Cities, because also they are interested in donations and in social issues. It is the German Chamber for Industry and Commerce, so the German National Association, and the Federal Association of the Welfare Organizations, like Red Cross, Caritas, and so on. So this is a diverse structure covering all the 3 sectors: state, public sector, economy, and the civil sector. And in several phases of our existence, one of those institutions was stronger engaged. In other times, others were stronger engaged. But altogether, this gave stability. Also reflected in a diverse financial basis. So our budget is financed by not by one main source, but by 4 to 5 main sources: public money, but also own income. So I think this is one of the lessons learned. The other one is that, of course, we should develop. We should develop our methods and even our standards. Not too hectically, not too quickly, but in a sufficient way. And at the moment, you're right, we are thinking whether the benchmark which we apply. So we have a strong and long tradition to calculate the administration and fundraising costs of the NGOs. We have a ceiling. We say that a maximum of 30% of the annual expenditure may be allocated to administration or fundraising. But we also explain to the public and to the media that fundraising and administration is important. It is positive. It is a prerequisite for competence, for transparency, as long as it stays in certain limits. We had in the past, and we are still having, an additional benchmark measuring the efficiency of fundraising and compared to the fundraising income. And there, at the moment, we are thinking that we should change this point, because it proved to be a very high workload for our auditing team, but also for the organizations. And in that phase, we are possibly changing that point and doing it more flexible and not as strict as before. But of course, the quality of the seal should not and will not be damaged because of this.
It's always very difficult to find this balance between go as far as possible in the analysis, but with reasonable resources for us and, of course, for the charities. So
yes, it is. Of course, you need participation in the discussion process. We should not decide it on our own. We include the organizations, we include scientists. But finally, we will decide on our own. It will be our board. And that's, I think, a third condition for a success is our neutrality and independence. So yes, finally, we are deciding as an independent monitoring organization, and not the monitored organizations can decide. They are included in the discussion, but not in the decision.
Yeah, of course. Harmienke, you changed some time ago, not that long ago, to a development-oriented monitoring in order to help charities and to improve. Please tell us this change and how it's been and how it's evolving.
Okay. Yeah, we call it development-oriented monitoring. And that means that our monitoring contributes to development of the charities. So our monitoring process is meant to help charities grow in professionalism. And when that happens, the sector grows in quality, and when that happens, trust is more easy to give to the sector. We are helped by the Standard Committee because they didn't make rule-based standards, but principle-based standards. So the principle is more important than exactly the letter of the standard itself. The way we do, we try to contribute to the growth in professionalism is that we use our data. Burkhard mentioned already that you have a lot of data about the fundraising percentage. We do have a lot of data as monitoring organizations. We're not only a monitoring organization, we are also a data institute and a knowledge institute. We know a lot about the sector. And because of, we have the data of our 680 organizations with a seal and also of 300 organizations without our seal. And we validate the data, so we have a high quality of data, and that means that we can make benchmarks and that we can have research and that we can have insights of the sector, and we give back that knowledge and insight. So an individual organization can compare itself to how the sector image is, and then they can see, hey, I'm good in this, but I can improve on that. And so then they, and that's the way that we try to do that. And I think more of us are doing that, yeah.
Martina, in the case of, now I speak as Fundación Lealtad, we're just starting with the analysis of impact, which for us is quite new. But you started 12 years ago in ZEWO in Switzerland. After these 12 years, what can we expect that can happen to us? So what can happen 10 years from now in this evolution of analysis of impact of what charities are doing? In fact, we took the model you have to be inspired and to put that in Spain. So we'd like to know what's going to happen, the crystal ball.
Yeah, it's quite a journey, I think, you start. For the first 3 or 4 years, when we started talking about impact to the charities, it was more like motivate them, convince them that impact is important, and also help and give guidance how they could start evaluating impact. So we organized trainings, we made manuals for charities to explain, to make sure we all understand the same when we talk about impact, and to learn together how to evaluate impact. And a few years later then we included the impact topic in the standards, and we started monitoring the charities according how they measure impact, not if their impact is enough high. We wanted to understand how do they plan their project and how do they evaluate the project and what conclusions are they drawing from the results. And now we gave to all the charities who have our seal, we assessed them, we monitored them, and we gave them feedback to tell them whether we think they're doing it well, or whether we think they could improve in monitoring impact. And what we see, like 10 or 12 years after we started, we see now, that's why I say it's a little bit of a journey, we are not at the end of this journey. We see 3 groups of charities. One group, and it's not the biggest one, unfortunately, is the group. They are very motivated by themselves for the impact topic. They even did impact assessments before we asked them to do it, because their board, their management, their project managers, they all knew it's important for their work, and they not only do it correctly, they also really take learnings out of the findings, and they introduce it in institutional learning and develop their organizations oriented on impact. But it's not the biggest group. We have a second group. They are also doing impact assessments, but they are maybe a little bit more also motivated because it's asked from others, from donors, from institutional donors, from governments who want to see impact assessments if they give money for a project. There we see also progresses because they really implemented impact assessments. But sometimes maybe there we have a little bit of a luck. They do it more to show that they do it, and maybe it's not so much integrated in decision making or in planning of new projects. It's more like they have to do it because they are asked to do it. Yeah. And then we have a third group, and unfortunately it's not the smallest one, which is still a little bit struggling with the topic, because maybe they are not so much forced to do it, because they are also smaller, they don't have a lot of resources, they think it's a complicated topic, and they are still struggling a little bit with quality management, with output. They are measuring output, but talk about impact, which is something different. And there, I think that's very focused now, and we think this group should be a little bit more, get a little bit more help also from us, and we try to come up with a tool, let's say semi-intelligent tool, to help them, because they have knowledge in their organization, but they have not formalized it, and maybe they don't even know it. Yeah. So we would like to give them some assistance with a question-guided tool about impact, so that they can come up with an impact model and make it more easier for them to plan their projects impact-oriented. But they have to do it themselves at the end, and they have to be convinced themselves at the end.
That's a challenging standard anyway.
Yeah, so it takes you a little bit time for this standard.
Yeah, it's to mark the path and to see where we should go and to go.
Yeah, but we clearly could see a development of the sector and of the charities, but they have different starting points and different issues in their organizations.
Yeah. Thank you. Javier, lleváis ya 12 años en Confío. Si no recuerdo mal, a los 10 años hicisteis un estudio de cómo habían evolucionado las organizaciones en esos 10 años que estabais en México. ¿Cuáles fueron las mayores conclusiones de ese estudio y qué próximos pasos? Porque, si no me equivoco, ahora estáis con la incorporación del sello. Empezasteis con organizaciones analizadas y ahora estáis pasando al modelo de sello, probablemente combinando los dos. ¿En qué momento estáis?
Bueno, pues primero creo que la reflexión y algo que estoy tomando de este panel es que todo va evolucionando. Como organizaciones y como evaluadores tenemos que evolucionar. En esa evolución, en México tenemos un dicho, no sé si en España aplique, que vamos haciendo camino al andar. Estamos innovando, estamos yendo en una dirección donde muchos no se atreven a ir, y es que queremos dar confianza a nuestras organizaciones. Hace 10 años, 12 años, que inició Confío en México con este modelo, y luego de estos 10 años hemos aprendido que hay situaciones más sencillas de empujar en una organización, hay situaciones que se pueden corregir de una manera más sencilla. Vamos a hablar acerca de los procesos tal vez internos, elementos de comunicación, elementos sobre el cumplimiento de las normativas. Sin embargo, hay otros elementos que no son tan fáciles de empujar y de mover esos indicadores que tenemos. Y me estoy refiriendo, por ejemplo, al tema del órgano de gobierno, que no es sencillo para una organización luego reestructurarlo o hacer que sea más activo. Entonces, el modelo luego también ha aprendido hemos aprendido que debe basarse mucho en el apoyo de los donantes, quienes tienen una gran voz, que son muy receptivas las organizaciones a esa voz de los donantes y que ciertamente van fijando un rumbo también del sector. Entonces, nuestros modelos tienen que ir alineados y con un sector donante muy sensibilizado a lo que como organizaciones de evaluación y con unos principios y unos estándares queremos impulsar y llegar a tener. Entonces, bueno, pues dentro de estos hallazgos, pues encontramos esto, que hemos trabajado 10 años, pero el sector también es como difícil de cambiar de un día para otro y más en temas de órganos de gobierno. Luego, como bien has dicho, estamos implementando ahora como una segunda fase de hacia dónde queremos que el sector vaya y darle una directriz a estas organizaciones, pero también a los donantes. Y en este sentido, estamos incorporando un sello, un distintivo, una acreditación, que antes no nos animamos, vamos a decirlo así, a decir que una organización estaba acreditada, pero luego, viendo todo lo que la organización dice y nosotros finalmente comprobamos que cumple, pues sí que podemos llamar a eso una acreditación, porque incluso he visto que por menos cualquiera a lo mejor dice que está acreditada y nosotros hacemos un trabajo pero muy profundo. Entonces, queremos nosotros que estas organizaciones que están en una fase 1 o en una fase ya avanzada, finalmente tener un objetivo más allá a través de esta acreditación. Este es el segundo fase, van a convivir actualmente estos dos, una fase como inicial, pero que es no la introductoria, pero sí la que tenemos desde un inicio, pero que las organizaciones también vean que pueden lograr un distintivo de acreditación. Y eso le va a permitir a la organización comunicar mejor realmente ese proceso y también nosotros qué es lo que queremos lograr con la organización. Y también el sector donante incorporarlo en estos procesos de impulso sobre cómo lograr esta acreditación. Serán ellos finalmente los que den retroalimentación a través de sus procesos de selección, de donación, de retroalimentación, para que las organizaciones luego presten mayor cuidado en estos elementos que como organizaciones queremos impulsar.
Muy bien, pues adelante con el nuevo modelo. Burkhard, in Germany you have something that some other countries share, but it's not usual from ICFO members, which is the blacklist, the non-eligible charities, the not recommended charities. Apart from how does it work, maybe I think it's interesting to know, this list, does it increase or reduce trust? Because you could see it in both ways. At the end you say, okay, maybe charities are not doing well, but in the other sense you say, no, but I know which one are not. So how is it working in the society, the impact of having this list? And also, if the medias are using this information or don't look at it, or how it's going, if we talk more about the bad than the good, I would say.
Well, I very much liked the image which Salvador painted of the dentist this morning. So in this sense, of course, a dentist is a necessary person. And if a dentist only polishes the good teeth, then it's not sustainable and not enough for the whole mouth for the whole sector. But this is only one part of the answer. I think another part of the answer is what I said in my first question, that this is also part of a development and also part of this kind of system which Javier described, that it is better to have several steps of donor information than only maybe one instrument. So our donor advisory service, when it started 130 years before, it started with telling what are the good apples and what are the bad apples. So we have a long tradition in doing this. It's also part of our profile, our DNA, that we see ourselves as an independent donor advisory and donor protection center. So to a certain extent, we are part of consumer protection sector. And for many years, we did also publish, or since all of our existence, publish negative as well as positive judgments. And the seal of approval then, now 30 years ago, was a new instrument specially emphasizing on and focusing on the very good ones and on those who voluntarily, and the application process is voluntary, the initiative comes from the NGOs who apply for the seal, who voluntarily want to obey to a very high level. But nevertheless, there are many other organizations, and as long as we receive a significant amount of donor questions, donor requests to certain organizations, even if they don't have our seal, we will address those organizations and ask them to send us several basic information like financial report, like registration, like fundraising material to produce such a judgment. It can be negative, it can be put them on the blacklist, but it can also be neutral. And even the neutral estimations on non-seal organizations are published on our website. And the seal was, as a positive instrument, very successful. And in that time, we a little bit lost the concentration on the blacklist. But then we did a workshop with non-profit organizations. I think it was in 2008, 2009. And they strongly asked us and recommended us to come back to also the blacklist, because they knew that there are bad apples in their family. And they really appreciate that an independent institution like DZI helps them and helps the public to detect those bad apples. Maybe to add a third one, we also have a third, beside of the seal and the evaluated non-seal information. We are part of a so-called initiative Transparent Civil Society, and it is a joint initiative together with Transparency International Germany, together with main umbrella bodies and even the consumer protection agencies in Germany. And we have formulated 10 minimum information which should be published on the website of all charities. And now I think roughly 2,000 charities in Germany have this very basic transparency level, which is not a seal, which is not an evaluation, but which is the third and basic level even of our activity to promote transparency.
Now to have minimums at least,
yeah.
That clear. Yeah, another issue that it's not usual, but it can happen, is management salaries. When management salaries are too high, that can be a problem, and it's also difficult to change if it's already done. So I know, Martina, that in ZEWO you've created a big study and you have on your website a calculator giving ideas of what's a reasonable range of management salaries. Please tell us, because it's very new for us.
Yes, yeah, it's a difficult topic and a sensitive topic, because salaries for NGOs, there is a gap between what the public is expecting, a salary or a decent salary or a good salary for an NGO is accepted, what the public is accepting, and what the market or what is necessary to pay if you want to have qualified employees, which are needed because charities get more and more professional. They have higher demands they have to respond to, and usually, at least in Switzerland, at the operational level, they work with paid staff. So we think and then especially the focus is on the salary of the top level of the director, or maybe also of presidents if they get paid. And we think it's a reputational issue or risk for the sector if we do not look at the salaries. And we think just to make them publish would only encourage to do rankings, which we do not like, as you mentioned in your presentation. So we decided to include it in our standards and to monitor the top salaries. We focus only on the top salaries of the NGOs. And therefore, we do a benchmark study every 5 years. We collect data from the monitored charities. We analyze the data together with a university who is specialized on NGOs. And they do like a statistical model with regression analysis to identify indicators which explain the level of a salary. So for a specific case, they create a calculator, and for a specific case, we can predict what would be the expected salary for this organization and this person. About 10 indicators we need to know for the CEO salary. And this estimated salary is like the starting point for our monitoring. We have then a range. Of course, it's not like we say this is exactly the salary you have to pay, but it's a starting point for the discussion with the NGO. And if we see they are much above, like 30% or more above, then we would really talk to them and say it's too high and it's a risk for the sector, you have to change something. If they're only a little bit higher, then we give them a feedback and it helps them to see where they stand. But the problem we had with this approach was that we were always too late, because they had already signed the contract, they had already employed the person, and then we came and had a tough discussion and did not make many friends. And we also lost some charities, of course. And that's why now we started to promote this calculator to the charities, not only use it for monitoring, but open it for the charities to use them in advance, because we want to encourage them to, before they employ or they look for new people, that they have an idea what would be a reasonable range for a salary, and that they can negotiate a salary which would be also accepted by the sector and not give a problem for the sector. But it's not a huge topic, it's just a focus topic with a few charities which are maybe not familiar with the sector or have other ideas.
No, of course, it's not a general problem. But it's something that when it arises, you need to find a solution.
Yeah, so. And it's always, our president has to participate in the discussion, the whole board is involved, and it's not a pleasant one, but it's a necessary one.
It's not an easy one, anyway.
Yeah.
And Harmienke, CBF is planning and is working on the possibility of extending the analysis not only to charities, as it's already doing, but also to crowdfunding platforms and maybe to social enterprises. So that's quite new for all of us, that we are focused on charities. Please tell us the plans and the possibilities you are studying on that subject.
Yes, well, I know I only have 4 minutes and we have a big clock over there. And I can talk about these developments very long, so I'll try to make it short. But yes, we see changes in the field of philanthropy. I think we all see it. And we see it in the ways people give to charities. We also see changes, or the focus on impact, we heard about it already. And when you look at the changes in giving, then crowdfunding platforms are one of them. Well, we had a scandal in the Netherlands with one of the crowdfunding platforms, I think 2 or 3 years ago. The platform went bankrupt, and the money given by the many donors to the many askers on that platform was gone. And of course, people were very angry. And quite some crowdfunding platforms wanted to show that they are trustworthy. So they came to us and they said, well, can we also have a seal? Can we also show that we are to be trusted? And within our own structure of our recognition system, as we call it, we have the charities, we have the standard committee, and we have ourselves. We also noticed that this scandal was influencing the way people looked at charities as well. It was also challenging the reputation of charities. And so also within the group of charities and the recognition system, we realized that it would be good to look into this. And so we started that process, I think, almost 2 years ago, or more than 2 years ago. We didn't finish it yet, we're almost there, because there are some challenges to take. There are some risks that are different. One of the risks that is different is that we are going to monitor the platform, not all the askers. So you need to be able to trust that the asker asking for money is going to do with the money that he says he's doing. And how can you mitigate those risks? And so it's a challenge. I think we found a solution. In the Netherlands, we as a monitoring organization, we don't set standards. We have an independent, separate committee who is setting the standards. So we work very closely together to see how we can solve the problems that we see. So I can talk about that much more. If you find it interesting, please come to me. I can share more. The other developments we see is that we see that philanthropy, charities are becoming more entrepreneurial, and that companies are becoming more social responsible. And those two trends are moving towards each other, and somewhere they meet. And we see already a lot of social enterprises with impact first. The profit they make go back to the purpose they have. And the purpose is building a better world in one way or the other. So when that happens, we have to ask ourselves the question, where do we draw that line? And what does that mean for the traditional charities? What does it mean for a monitoring system? What does it mean for a standard setting? So that we are looking into that. I think monitoring social enterprises would be step 3 or 4. But asking ourselves now the question what this means for monitoring charities who are becoming more entrepreneurial is a question I think we should ask ourselves right now. So that's why we started.
Thank you. Interesting. I'll ask all of you a headline of how you see charities in your countries, very different countries. So just a headline that we could have about that. Javier, let's go in this order if you want.
Bueno, ¿me escucho? ¿Sí?
¿Se oye? Sí.
En México vemos un sector muy interesado, creciente, en el fortalecimiento de las buenas prácticas, que desea ser visto como confiable y que está trabajando para poder lograrlo y tener esas colaboraciones que diariamente pide de todos sus públicos de interés. Así lo vemos.
CBF, Harmienke?
Well, my sentence would be a sentence of hope, and not only about the charities in the Netherlands, but what I see is that in a world where there is a lot of distrust, we as monitoring organizations are raising trust. And in a world of war, in a world of economic crisis, a world of climate challenges, charities and their supporters don't only dream of a better world, they are building it.
Martina?
Charities in Switzerland, they have a lot of trust from donors, because donors give 80% of the household, 70% of the people give regularly to charities, and they give more and more. Last year we had like more donations than ever. So they are seen as a very relevant players or actors, and they earn trust, and we hope with our work to to contribute that this trust will stay and charities are further developing in a professional way?
Well, in Germany, in a narrow sense, it's a challenge for the charities to fight against the dropping percentage of people donating money. So this percentage is dropping because of several reasons. And fight maybe is not the right word, but they should really meet this challenge and find new ways to communicate to donors. Also to do more collaboration among each others. That's another point. In a broader sense, civil society, if you see it, is not only the good ones. In Germany, we see an increasing number of civil society movements which are bad for the society. Yeah? So populist movements, extremist movements, and it will cause additional activities for the society, but also for us and for the charity world to divide and to detect those organizations who could be very bad and painful to a society, be it on the right wing or on the left wing.
Yeah, okay. María Eugenia.
Fenomenal. Bueno, muchísimas gracias, ha sido muy interesante. Tengo un par de preguntas del público. Bueno, ha habido más, pero vamos a agrupar. Han preguntado, y yo creo que es un tema que se puede comentar durante el café, por las empresas sociales. No, it's okay. Preguntan, entidades que se plantean en países donde no hay un evaluador ahora, ¿cuáles serían las recomendaciones para empezar? ¿Y qué apoyo podéis prestar desde la red a las nuevas organizaciones que se quieren constituir? Y otra pregunta sobre Principle Oriented Standards, que has mencionado, Harmienke. Si nos puedes explicar un poquito más.
Pues, si acaso contesto la primera pregunta.
Perfecto.
Y Harmienke, then you answer yours. Con respecto a la primera pregunta, I'll say that in English. I think it's maybe nicer. If a country an organization want to start working on monitoring, they, of course, in ICFO, we are glad to give support on that. The support will never be economic support. This is important to know. But we help, we explain the model, we give guidelines. And for example, last year, Burkina Faso entered in ICFO. In this entrance, they're working on how to start monitoring, but they're still not monitoring. What we do with them is we organize some meetings with different members, explaining how each one of us work, so they can decide which model works better for them, and also take ideas and create their own model inspired by all of us. So this is what ICFO is doing. ICFO is always helping and very happy to help anyone that would like to start monitoring in his country, and depending the way, but always with know-how. And for the other question?
Yeah, and I missed the first ones, but the question you want me to respond to is about the principle-based
Yes.
Standards. Yes, well, a principle-based standard is a standard that is about the principle behind it. So you really have to understand what is meant by the standard. A rule-based standard is telling you exactly what you have to do. What you see often with rule-based standards, so an example of that would be the 30% or the 25% we had in the Netherlands, that you are not allowed to spend more on fundraising than 25% of what the revenue is out of fundraising. But that one is a rule-based standard. And what we saw was that charities were working around it. They were very good at working around it. Now we have a principle-based standard, which means that charities have to show that they spend as much money as they can to realize their mission. And, and they have to be transparent about it. And of course we have our benchmarks, so we can tell an organization you are far below the benchmark? Why is it? And often they have a very good reason. So they can have a reason, we are saving money because we, in 2-3 years from now, we want to do a big project and we don't have the money unless we save money. And then you have a few years that you spend less on the mission, but that you're saving money to do a lot for the mission 2-3 years later, which is, of course, the ultimate purpose, isn't it? So it sounds sometimes easier, principle-based standards, but principle-based standards are much more difficult to live up to than rule-based standards. Yeah. I hope that makes it a little bit more.
I think it's pretty clear, and yeah, I think it's that's the complexity of our work, to understand, does it make sense?
Yeah.
Even if maybe the numbers are not that good, does it make sense? It makes sense, so it's fine.
Yeah, that's
So,
why it's so
that's
important to talk to each other, to really not only look at reports, but also have that conversation with each other. Yeah.
Okay, we
Perfecto.
run out of
Muchísimas-
time, so...
Sí, muchísimas gracias.